friends. We are here to talk about the most important person in our lives. The most important person as forbearance from the time we were thought to have been born to the time we are born and throughout our life. Guess who it is? So, if you are not able to guess, she can be your mother, she can be your wife, she can be your sister, your daughter, or simply your friend. Yes, we are talking about women. The womanhood, motherhood, this is a topic of interest today, which we are here to talk. And I'm very happy today to share this dais with you with my friend. So the topic today we are here to discuss is fostering fertility, which is completely on the health of the woman throughout her lifespan and how we can cherish her and motivate her to live her life better. And my friend, Dr. Neeta Singh, I am very honored to share the dais with her. She's a professor in Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at AIMS, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Delhi. She has been awarded the fellowship of ICMR DHR for UCL, London, UK for reproductive medicine. She has been awarded by Foxy twice in 1998 and 2001. She has a lot of papers to her name which are in indexed peer-reviewed journals, about 120 of them. She has written about 24 chapters in textbooks and many guest lectures and presented papers. She's a very loving human being, wonderful person. Thank you, Neeta, for accepting our invitation. I welcome you to our program on fostering fertility. And the first thing I would like to understand from you is we all talk about the woman as she's known as Stree in the Indian tradition, Indian context, we call the woman as Stree. And Stree means a lot of inner inspiration, inner the creation, the power of creation rests within her. So, can you start this program talking about something on womanhood?
Thank you, Snehal. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. And I'm very happy to be with you today on this program. And I'm sure we will discuss on some issues which are very pertinent to the present day. We are talking about 21st century, and there are many issues which are very relevant to present day women. We will be discussing them. So as you rightly said that woman is the cornerstone of a beginning of a family. A family cannot start without her. So we say that if you do not have a female in the house, it's no more a house. It's not. It can be a house, but it cannot be a home. So such important is the position of a woman in the society.
Thank you. Thanks, Neeta. So, my next question to you is, do you feel that the early ages which we look at in a girl and as a girl child and an adolescent, do you think that nurturing her health that time gives a foundation for later on life? Do you feel that? And if so, if you can share some insights on how the girl and adolescent should be, you know, nurtured by the society and by us, and any tips
That's,
on that?
yeah, so it's a very relevant question. So during the adolescent age, we have to first counsel these young girls about the menstrual hygiene. It is very important to educate them about menstruation, as we know that we have a vast variety of socioeconomic status in our country. So we're talking about not so fortunate young females who have no idea about how to handle menstruation, about menstrual hygiene, and how to handle it. So we have to educate them. Secondly, this is a transition period between uh, childhood to a young adult. So the adolescents have to be counseled about family planning, using contraceptives, about the sexual education, and also they have to be how they can be abused also. If they are not educated how to take care of them, there are many chances that may be abused. So that is very important. And third is that their nutrition and anemia. Because when they start their period, it is seen that many of the women, they start getting anemic because they're not taking proper diet and the iron. And so they enter the parenthood, or when they get married, they enter into the motherhood in a very anemic condition. And that takes a toll not only on the health of the woman, but also on the offspring and the child which they have to carry. So the nutrition is also very important in the adolescence. I would say regarding menstruation, regarding sexual education, use of contraceptive, how to take care of themselves and avoid abuse, and how to take a proper diet and nutrition and exercise to enter into a more informed adult.
So that's a holistic wellness that we look at as a human, as a woman, that we would offer to her right from the
Yes.
beginning, because most of the
Yes.
times the nutritional factors count a lot. As you said, anemia is a big problem, especially in a country like India. So it's
Yes.
very heartening to know from you, and I hope our viewers definitely understand that we all have to nurture our sisters and whoever are around us, our daughters, in a right way. So my next question to you, when we are talking of marriage, what do you think is the optimal age for marriage? What is defined as an optimal age? You see, because of the lifestyles nowadays, girls want to get married late. They want to settle down. So according to you as a gynecologist, looking at the fertility parameters, what do you think should be the right age?
So Snehal, the age of marriage has been changing, right? In 80s, we used to say that by 1820, the girls used to get married. As the female literacy and education improved, the girls started focusing on their education and career. So they started delaying marriage. And now from 1820, it became 22, 23, now 25. And we will say that in 21st century, women are not even ready for marriage up to 30. And I would say that's late. So the optimum age, I would say, for marriage is between 25 to 27. So 25, 26. And because when they get married, they need some time to settle with the new family, with the new partner, with husband. And then maybe within 2 years, they are ready to start the family.
Okay, wonderful. And do you think that emotionally also the woman should be, ready for marriage, or the compatibility? Because many girls talk of the compatibility, emotional compatibility coming into picture. So should she do something to enhance her emotional compatibility? Do you think that is essential, or it comes by adjustment, by blending with the family? How do you
I
think that?
think girls get mature faster than boys.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So we all got married when we were very young. I got married when I was 22, and I think I was quite mature at that age.
Yes.
If we talk of 22 today, they say, oh, I am a kid, you're doing a child marriage. But, it's like by 24, 25, most of the girls, their basic education is complete. Education, I never say it's complete, it's an ongoing process.
Ongoing process.
We educate ourselves every day. So the
Yeah.
whole life journey is an education or enrichment. So we can't say that you finish, we will say that maybe you finish your college education, maybe your professional qualification, maybe complete by 25, and then you are, you are quite, I think, emotionally mature by that age. If you rather delay, then there are problems with adjustments because your personality gets fixed. It's not very flexible. You've been used to living alone, managing your affairs single-handedly. Now, when you stay for a very long time single, then when you have to stay in a family or with your new partner or your husband, then you find that there are limitations because you can't take decisions. You have to consult people about taking decisions, which sometimes, girls don't like these days. So I would say that in a way it is easier for adjustment purposes also if you get married early.
Thank you. So after marriage comes the child, needless to say. There are mixed opinions when it comes to the childbearing. So some of the couples look forth for an early child, and all of us know that we had kids early and we could manage things better. But nowadays there is a shifting trend which is seen towards the childbearing. What are your views, and what does the the medical part say in when it comes to the optimal age of childbearing for both the boy and the girl?
Okay, so see, for a female, there is a definite fertile window.
Yeah.
Their fertility potential is limited, and henceforth they have to understand that they have to plan their life in a very systematic manner. Otherwise, sometimes it is too late. So the optimum time to have baby is considered less than 30, that you should have a baby by 30. If you want two children, then maybe by 35 you should definitely finish the childbearing, because when we talk about optimum fertility, the fertility is at peak when you are 25, and it plateaus between 25 to 28 to 29, and then the moment you cross 30 it starts declining, and the decline is very steep post 35. So if you are wanting to delay pregnancy, it should be a very informed choice. And you know that, okay, you're okay if you even don't have your own biological children, you're okay, you can adopt a child. But if you don't make these choices informed, then you get into a lot of frustration that you are not knowing that there is a biological window which is very limited for the female, and you have to plan things according to that window. And the fertility potential of each individual is different, which depends on the ovarian reserve of that person, which may vary. For one person, it may be up to 30, another it may be 35, another may be 38. But having said that, I would still say that the, the ideal time to have baby is always less than 30. Regarding the boys, although the boys also don't have unlimited fertility, but God has been little biased when he created men, because men could reproduce even after 35, 40, 45, 50. But the newer research has brought a new insight into this field, and the data is showing that men who father babies who are more than 40 are more prone for neurodevelopmental delays, autism, and many mental retardation issues, which were earlier not thought of. And men were given a free hand that they could have babies even in 50s and 60s. But of lately, they could reproduce, but we have to think of the child which you are wanting to bring that. If that baby, because there are DNA fragmentation, there are certain de novo mutations happening in the sperm, and because of that, in the aging men, there are possibility that you transfer those mutations into the offspring, and that offspring could be affected. Therefore, the fertility should not be mixed with sexuality. You may be able to have sex even later in life, but having a baby at that age may not be giving a healthy baby at that age.
That answers a lot of my question. That's very revealing. See, as I work as a developmental therapist, and I'm seeing that there is an increasing rise in the percentage of children who come to me, as you said, with neurodevelopmental disability. There is a lot of rise in children who come to me with autism, because there's so much a woman does on the laptop, and she's so much into her own world of mobiles. I think that gadget called a mobile is becoming more of an hindrance even to family life and towards a normal mental health, which you call of the mother and child. So I would like to ask you, the next question is, as you're working in the field of reproductive medicine, what is the incidence of infertility, and what are the diseases which arise due to differing fertility?
Snehal, it's a very good question. Infertility is alarmingly rising. When I was a student, it was like 3%, 4%. In late 90s, it became 5%. And you will be surprised to know that about 16 to 18% marriage couples in India are infertile. And it is the global trend. And why it is happening? Maybe because we are more conscious about our professional careers and more for our professional ambitions, and probably the family and fertility has been not thought of so important and has left behind, and that has given rise to severe rising trend in infertility. There are certain issues also related to lifestyle. We will discuss later that why it is increasing. Secondly, you asked me that by deferring fertility, are we inviting troubles? Yes, definitely for females, because when we get pregnant, we avoid our periods for 9 months. We have to breastfeed the babies another 6 to 7 months. So we do not menstruate about 1.5 to 2 years sometimes. So if we reduce the number of menstruation, the incidence of endometriosis reduces. It has been shown. So endometriosis, for sure, if we defer fertility or pregnancy, it is bound to come. Secondly, in diseases like fibroids, it is very common because uterus is meant to carry baby. If you do not carry a baby, something else will come there.
Oh.
And that is what it is said, that fibroids are benign tumors of the uterus, that the uterus tend to develop fibroids, endometriosis, menstrual disorders, and adenomyosis. All these problems are more common in women who do not have babies. So it is like a vicious cycle that you do not have babies, these pathologies start coming up, and because of these pathologies, it is more difficult to have babies then. So if you do not plan your family at the right time, it becomes very difficult later on to have children.
So since you were talking of conditions, there are a few, I mean, I deal a lot with younger generations since we have a lot of workshops which we keep for the younger generation. And my therapists who are working with me definitely are in the age group, maybe from 20 to 25 and a little more. So they all have this, many of them, I think I'm looking at 70 to 80% of females having this PCOS or PCOD diagnosis against them. So do you think, I mean, it's rampant to use nowadays. I have PCOD. So do you think, would you comment on this, or would you educate us on this term PCOD and the associated hypothyroidism?
Yes, PCOD, it is also kind of a lifestyle disorder these days, because it is a disease called a complex problem related to metabolic syndrome. And it is definitely related to lifestyle. So it is linked with obesity. So, and obesity leads to PCOD. So PCOD means you have ovaries which has lots of immature follicle which secretes some kind of hormone which tends to make you obese, because you develop insulin resistance, and because of insulin resistance there is adiposity, and that leads to weight gain, and there is increased amount of testosterone or the male hormone in the body, which leads to hirsutism, changes in the voice, your complexion starts getting darker. So it becomes quite a complex metabolic syndrome. You are more prone to develop type 2 diabetes, and you may have hypertension or coronary artery disease, and these all lead to anyway infertility. So PCOD, to begin with, it is more not related to infertility. To de novo, it is because of the in utero gene programming. We say there is some epigenetic changes. Why some women are prone for PCOD? They say while the mother was carrying the female baby, there was some epigenetic programming happening in that baby, which leads to when the baby is born, the baby is more fatter. You see, some children are very fat when they are young. we say, oh, very glaxo kind of a baby, chubby baby, we feel very happy. Now, these days, it's very alarming. If you see a very chubby baby, you have to tell the parents, take care of her health. It's not a healthy baby. It is unhealthy
Right.
to have a very obese child. And then it becomes a vicious cycle. The child is obese. The child doesn't want to play because it's hard for him to play. He's obese, and then he tends to put on more weight. And when this child gets into puberty, then there are problem, delayed puberty, when the puberty sets in, the irregular cycles, and then develop PCOD, and then it becomes a complex syndrome.
So it's all about cycles. We are
Yes,
not following our basic circadian rhythm, and
yes,
everything goes for a toss. So,
yes.
what is the impact of lifestyle? We are talking about lifestyle. So, what is the impact of lifestyle on the fertility of a male and a female?
Snehal, it is a very, very pertinent questions because we are all in the digital age.
Yeah.
So not only children, young adult, you talk of any age, even you see the grannies, they will be sitting with the mobile phones and WhatsApp. So your physical activity is limited. And it is really, really a great concern because if your physical activity is limited, you are inviting troubles. Your accelerated aging, and right from beginning, your menstrual cycle gets derailed, your ovulation doesn't happen, you develop infertility, and you have all the problems. Obesity has a very high incidence of uterine cancers, ovarian cancers, breast cancers. So obesity is linked with any disease. You talk of heart disease, you talk of cancers. So first of all, we have to make ourselves away from this, it's good to be in digital age, but not so non-productive in terms of being sedentary. Secondly, diet plays another very important role in keeping ourselves healthy, not only in terms of fertility, but in terms of all kind of diseases. So another very important lifestyle factor is diet and exercise. And third very important killing factor is stress. The stress world, I don't think so anybody can remove from their life. Our lives have become more complicated because of various reasons. We are working, everything, you have to multitask, which generates a lot of stress. So you have to make yourself stress free because this is also related to fertility. If you are having any kind of stress, your ovulation will stop, you will not get pregnant, and then you are more stressed because you're not getting pregnant, and it is, becomes a vicious cycle. And fourth is smoking and alcohol. You will see that lot of youngsters, they're indulging in smoking and alcohol and drugs. It is a very, very, sad state of affair. The Western world went into this drugs, smoking, alcohol business, and now gradually have realized and started giving up. Now it has come to now third world countries or developing countries like us, and right from the school time you see children are smoking, they become young adult, they're smoking, they're drinking. I'm really sorry to share that you see so many girls smoking. I don't know. It is nothing to, be very proud of that you smoke or drink. I would say that you have to really, really see that why you are so intelligent that you could develop your professional career. You are so have such a high IQ that your mothers didn't smoke. But if you smoke and have babies, you take it from me that you're going to have very growth restricted babies. These babies will not have very high IQ. They will have neurodevelopmental delays. They may have cancers when they grow up as young adults. So you are bringing a next generation full of diseases. So I would say not only men, women and men both should not indulge into smoking and alcohol. It is really, really very sad affair. And drugs strictly no at any age for anyone. So these are certain lifestyle things which I feel are very relevant to today's youth, and you should not indulge into if you are looking to be a potential parent in near future. We always ask a couple if they come for us for consultation that do you drink and smoke? And if they say yes, then we tell them that you have to abstain both drinking and alcohol for at least 6 months to detox your body before you can embark on the journey of parenthood.
I think detox is the word in all ways. It's not only physical, but also mental, psychological, emotional, because they all carry, I think, a lot of baggages from the past. And much of this baggage comes also from having relationships pre-marriage. So what is your thoughts on having premarital sex and abortion pills? Is it harmful to their future life and fertility?
Snehal, it is very, very important in context of the present day. I would try to, from your today's webinar, I would like to convey this message to present youth. It is good to have friends. You can have male and female friends because it's the emotional need. When we grow up, we need friends, and we should not segregate that you cannot have a male friend or you cannot have a girlfriend. You should have. It is not bad to have a friend. But I would say that if you indulge into sex prior to marriage, or you children are these days into live-in relationships, but if you have sex with a person you're not sure you will get married, then nothing will happen to a man. There is no proof of a virginity from a male. But for a female, not only emotionally it takes a toll of that experience, but if you happen to get pregnant, how will you handle that pregnancy? It is always a very bad scar in the memory of yours. So when you have to go for an abortion, either you visit a doctor, you get it done surgically, you take it medically, and you believe that about 2% of these unwanted pregnancies could be ectopic pregnancies. And many young women lose their life because if the pregnancy is ectopic, it may rupture anytime. And these young girls, they're not aware that it is an ectopic pregnancy. They indulge so casually into sex without realizing that how difficult the situations may be. We sometimes get unmarried girl in the casualty. She's in shock. She doesn't know, barely she will not give you even the history that she has had an unprotected sex or even a protected sex. You don't know, you still can get pregnant. And when you investigate, you find that there is tons of blood, free blood in the abdomen because she's had an ectopic, which is ruptured. She needs an immediate surgery where you have to remove her tubes, which she may never get pregnant again. Because if you remove one tube or both the tubes, she will require few units of blood to save her life. Sometimes we are able to save, sometimes we are not able to save. So you have to realize it is not a very simple thing for a female. And if just into a casual sex you can lose your life, it's very, very serious problem. So I would say that you may have friends. It's not bad to have friends, but indulging into premarital sex, you have to first think of the consequences you may have to face. And if you are doing everything by knowing, I would say it's okay if you know the consequences. But don't do as an experiment or want to indulge into some kind of adventure. It can be sometimes become a misadventure for you, losing your life.
So responsibility is the word when you think of all these things, when you're thinking of relationships, physical, mental, when you're trying to get along with someone, it all boils down to one word, which is responsibility. And also, as you said, it is not only about the physical damage. I think in the girls, it is also the emotional. And when I read from one of our literatures, where the yogic psychology, as has been defined by Dr. Kamlesh Patel, it is the subtle body, the Paramanu Kosha, which also has the remnants or maybe the memories of whatever has happened uh, into it. And these subtle bodies, as he says, have these memories and can cause issues later on. So I think one has to be really, really careful when we are looking at relationships. So my next question to you is, can fertility be deferred and preserved by egg banking? So egg banking has become a big thing nowadays, Anna. So I would like you to shed some light on this.
Yeah, Snehal, it is another very important question you have raised. Can we defer fertility? A lot of women come to us who are into their peak of their careers. You know, as I said, it's better if you have one child before 30. And if you think you cannot have a baby, can you defer fertility? Like somebody who's studying and say that I can't get married. Even if I get married, I can't plan because I'm doing my PhD, or I'm on career graph where I cannot take sabbatical suddenly if I want a pregnancy. Or you are in a profession which is into a glamour world where if you become pregnant, you might, require it will change your image, because becoming a mother, from a girl you suddenly become a mother. So your what you say, that your popularity index may come down, and you may not be able to get those kind of films or those kind of uh, the,
Roles.
the jobs
The
which
roles
you were
which,
able to get earlier. So can we do it? So I would say that for a girl who's into their career or professional life, I would say I would not recommend them that they should defer their pregnancy or fertility, because you will never settle in your life. When you think that you are in 30s, you are about to get a promotion, now you get that promotion, and then you plan pregnancy and you don't get pregnant because of your age, because your ovarian reserve is declining, then it is very frustrating. It is always good to plan your family life in a very systematic and planned way. And career can always take a backstage for some years or few years in the girl's life. So girls always start comparing, because these days with women, and they say for a guy it is okay, he doesn't have to carry the baby, he doesn't have to breastfeed the baby, he will have all the gala time without doing anything, he will become a father, just 5 minutes job and he's a father. But for a girl, she has to take all the brunt for 9 months, then go through the process of birthing, then the another 2 3 years you have to devote for the baby to come up. So why do the girls forget that men are never worshipped in any home? You will find always a baby or a mother, a mom is always worshipped. She always have a very special place in the life of your children, never the dad. Why? It is because it is you. So if you start comparing with men, then probably you will have to come down from that pedestal which not only the society, the God has given you.
right.
I take it as a privilege that yes, I have the potential to give birth to somebody. Men cannot. So why should you feel that you are at disadvantage? I say I take it as a more advantageous position. God has been kind that I can reproduce. Without me, men cannot have a baby. So you take it as an advantage and feel happy. Yes, you can give birth. You can create humanity and new world. So you should not take it otherwise. Secondly, if you're in a profession where, yes, definitely in a glamour profession, in context to Mumbai, I would say somebody, a more aspiring model or a film actress, yes, you could defer. You have an option of egg banking. I would say you should not do for, again, just for your career's sake. You could get the test done, find out your fertility potential by doing certain tests which can tell you what is the ovarian reserve, functional ovarian reserve of that person. And depending upon that for ovarian reserve, you can plan your career and defer fertility. And the last resort is, of course, the oocyte banking, which is, I would say, is limited to only 1 to 2% patients. I do not I educate my patient about egg banking, tell them the advantages and disadvantages, but banking your oocyte does not guarantee you a baby, because many women think I have banked my eggs and I can happily enjoy my life until 40s, do my films career and be at the peak of my career, and then take retirement and then have babies and become a homemaker. And I think if you are planning something like this, it will be very, very frustrating situation. because just by merely banking your eggs does not guarantee you a baby. And therefore, I would say that it should be, uh, reserved for patients who have cancer, for oncofertility reasons, that a young patient have breast cancer, ovarian cancer, where you have to undergo chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and obviously if you're suffering from cancer, you can't think of having a baby at that stage. And then you can bank your eggs. And because of the improvement in technology, good chemotherapeutic drugs and radiation facilities, the women are living much longer. There is a life beyond cancer. And then in this situation, there is a definite role of oocyte banking or the sperm banking for deferring fertility. And I would say not casually that any woman who feels, yeah, let's bank our eggs, I'm not ready to have a baby now, I would not recommend at all for those patients or those people. I hope it answers everything.
Yes, yes. There's one more pertinent question about this, the cells, the stem cells which are stored during at birth. What is your view on that? Because that is one
Oh,
question which has
you
been
mean the
asked by
cord
these.
blood banking?
Yes, yes. What is that?
Okay.
And can you share?
Actually, the cord blood banking is of use for a very, very small subset of patients. If you have a history, familial history of having some kind of leukemias or hemopoietic malignancies, then potentially maybe your baby if may be born with those mutations, and if the baby develops any kind of leukemia or anything, then these cells which you are banking can be used for bone marrow transplant. Secondly, if you have a sibling and the sibling is affected by any of these hemopoietic malignancies, for sibling, if you want to donate your stem cells, then you can harvest the stem cells from the umbilical cord blood banking and then could transfer the into the bone marrow transplant. So I would say it has a very, very limited role, not for all. And we don't know that how many of you will develop later on leukemia, lymphoma, or your siblings will develop leukemia, lymphoma. The chances are very, very less. So I would not say, I think it's more of a commercial gimmick rather than being used really to be very, very useful for the general masses. So there are definite indication when should you advise your patient for go for the cord blood banking, not for all.
And another pertinent question which has come is about IVF. When should one think about IUI and IVF? Is there
See,
any guideline which you
yes,
can give? A
yes.
simple guideline.
Yeah, so when we say the patient is infertile, is that you've been trying to get pregnant for 1 year, you're in a relationship, you are regularly having contact with your husband, we tried for 1 year and you've not got pregnant, and you are less than 30 years. Now, if you are 35 or more, around 35 years, then trying only 6 months you try, and if you don't get pregnant, you qualify to be called as infertile. So then you need to have, need some assistance from the doctor, and you need to take the services of the specialist. Now, your doctor will do certain tests, look at your fallopian tubes, look at the sperm of your husband, and will look at what is the ovarian reserve. Depending upon that, the doctor will plan the treatment for you. If your fallopian tubes are blocked, or if your husband's semen analysis is very, very suboptimal, the chances are that you have to go and have IVF. Without IVF, you may not have a baby. If your ovarian reserve is very less, then you know that you have very limited time. Your ovarian reserve is going to go very soon. And if you keep trying conventional treatment, by the time you reach IVF, you may not have your own eggs. So in those situations also, IVF is a better option. And if everything is normal and you're not able to get pregnant, means you have unexplained infertility, then IVF is definitely a better solution for you rather than doing other conventional treatment.
Thank you. That was really, really a big revelation, because there are so many couples who approach us. So we have a lot of programs for young couples to prepare them. So little bit about how to prepare for conception. How does a couple prepare? So if you can elaborate on the importance of folic acid, because that is something which a
Yes,
woman
yes.
doesn't
So,
understand.
yeah,
She has
yeah.
to
So when they,
prepare herself mentally and physically, and all
yeah.
the investigations what she needs to do.
So when the couple comes for your preconceptional counseling, so what we tell them to get their blood groups tested, whether they are Rh positive or negative, and depending upon that you have to plan. Then you have to get the certain baseline tests like the kidney function test, hemogram. If she's anemic, you need to correct her anemia, and thyroid function test we generally get, because if she's hypothyroid and if she doesn't know, she gets pregnant, there are chances that the baby could have mental retardation because if the mother is hypothyroid. The incidence of hypothyroidism is quite high in our country. uh, Thirdly, we have to give them folic acid mandatory, and we have to educate them about the fertile period when they get married, that if they are planning to have baby, then when they should have sex, and if they don't want to have a baby, when then they should have sex. So the fertility, you have to tell them about the fertile period. So if they want to have baby, they have to have sex during that fertile period to have the fertilization of the egg. And if they do not want to have the baby, as a contraceptive advice, you have to tell them not to have intercourse during that time. And thirdly, a very good discussion about the contraceptives, what are their advantages, disadvantages, how long they can use, about their safety profile needs to be discussed. And what is the right time when they come to you? It is advisable to do a ultrasound, a transvaginal ultrasound of the female, and that will tell you that everything is reassuring, her uterus is normal, her ovaries are normal, her uterine lining is normal. And then you can counsel her, okay, there is some time, if the ovarian reserve is all right, that okay, for a year or two, if you do not want to have a baby, you can defer. But if you see her first time and you see that she has a borderline ovarian reserve, her uterus is not looking good, she has endometriosis, this is a patient, even if she is 25-year-old, you have to say that, hold on, this is the time you should plan your baby, because your endometriosis is going to accelerate, and then your ovaries will develop big size cyst, and your ovarian reserve will go down, and it may be difficult for you to have a baby. So it is good to plan a baby right now at this age. It may now not sound very good, but if you counsel them to have early pregnancy, then you can really help her by giving her good counseling.
So I'm so happy that I have met you today, and we had this talk, Dr. Neeta, because you're a real baby maker. They call me the baby whisperer, and I call you the baby maker.
Thank you so
So,
much.
so we will definitely have another chat sometime, Neeta, for women who have problems with, as the age advances. So I think one of the days we can get together, both of us, and have a chat on how we can educate the women who have issues with, the further life, the menopause part of it. So we have these programs, and I'm definitely wanting you to be a part of these heartfulness wellness programs on relationships and union of hearts, which you are definitely a part of it. The infertility programs for couples. We have beautiful beginnings and we have joyful parenting. So needless to say, we welcome one and all to participate on these programs. If you all want to know anything more about heartfulness wellness initiatives, or if you have any personal queries, feel free to write to us at wellness and at heartfulness.org. Dr. Neeta, I'm sure you're one of our most valuable panelists in all the programs, and I really thank you from the bottom of my heart for having spared your time in today and being with us. I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions for you from our youngsters, and we'll have another session together. Thank you, Dr.
Yes.
Neeta. Thanks for
Thank
being
you.
there.
Thank you so much. I also enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.